And we're live.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Main Street Live. My name is Gary Washer. I'm here today with Dr. Pete Camiolo. How you doing, Dr. Pete?
Doing great, Gary. Great to be with you today.
Thanks for being with us. I want to give an introduction about Dr. Pete before we get started in the interview. I met Dr. Pete several months ago at a unrelated event that had to do with what he does in chiropractic. But many years ago, I went to Josh Axe in Nashville and dealing with headaches that I had, and I didn't realize at the time that getting adjustments in chiropractic could help my headaches. Well, I stopped going to Dr. Josh Axe and just took a time off from seeing anybody. Then recently, of course, I've had some back pains and other issues and injury issues as far as doing my activities. I started going to see Dr. Pete and starting to see results. Now, what is important about Dr. Pete? He does a practice that I always hear, and I constantly hear people, and I know people who've seen him for years already who tell me about how they've gotten off medications, how their life has changed, how they've lost weight, how all these things have changed about their life. And what we want to do is talk to Dr. Pete today about those things, kind of the things that he does. How can we make a health change in our own life? Because as we've talked on the show before, and especially dealing with some of the political things we've talked about in the past, we have a healthcare system in our country that is not actually about health care. It's about sick care. It's not designed to get you healthy. It's designed to sell you drugs. So what we want to do is let everybody know that there are other options out there besides the traditional ways of doing medicine. So, Dr. Pete, I want to first ask you, how long have you been doing chiropractic, and what actually inspired you to get started in it?
Great question. My inspiration, I think, is really probably going to summarize a lot of what we're going to talk about today. I've been actively practicing for 8 years, and 9 years actually. It's going to be 10 years soon. So 9 years, and my background is actually as an occupational therapist as well. That's what I studied in undergrad, and so I worked in healthcare for the last 15 years of my life. I've been in and out of clinics, hospitals, subacute rehab settings, and now I own a facility here in Murfreesboro, and I've been doing this over 7 years here in Murfreesboro in my clinic. But it all started in the mid-'90s with my brother Jonathan, who was suffering with severe asthma and allergies and digestive issues and headaches. Similar to you, Gary, you had headaches. He was dealing with migraine headaches where he would literally lose his vision. And this was a teenager. I mean, my parents really started seeing a chiropractor actually after they had exhausted everything that the traditional medical system and model really has to offer. And they went that system first because that's what they trusted and that's what they were familiar with, and that's what everyone else did. And so they had to take the road less traveled in many ways, and it made all the difference, because once they were able to really dive into understanding the root cause of the problem, they stopped treating my brother's symptoms, and they really started addressing the root cause. They ended up taking my brother to Tijuana, Mexico in 1996, when my brother was 18 years old, to the Gershon Institute, where they work with cancer patients, where it's legal in Mexico to use nutritional therapy as a medical doctor to treat patients, whereas in the United States it's illegal. But they do it legally there. So my brother went there to get some help from the nutritional side, and they started doing detoxification and nutritional recommendations to start to deal with the deficiencies that he had at a major level. And it was at this time they also discovered chiropractic, and so they began bringing my brother to a chiropractor, and it was really the combination of a whole lifestyle change that ultimately led to his change, his health and healing. And he went from being an 18-year-old who was cachexic. I mean, he was basically dying. He used to be morbidly obese because of the steroids that he was on for all those years for the asthma. I mean, he was as an 8th grader, he was over 250 pounds. But then by the time he was 18 years old, he was probably down to like 130 pounds. It looked like he was dying. And so he went through all of these things, going through drugs and surgeries all through his early teen years, all the way through high school. And then in a matter of, well, 2 years really, but 6 months of time, I mean, they saw a radical change in his life by combining chiropractic care for his spine, nutritional care for his cells, and detoxification for his overall body, and rest. And when they combined all those things together, my brother healed. And it was at that time that I was going off to college, and I witnessed all of this all my life. I watched him be sick all of my life and go to doctor's appointments with my mom, because I was, less than 2 years apart in age, so we did everything together as a family. And then I saw him heal, and it was at that time that I started to consider going the natural route as far as a practitioner, and chiropractic was the path that I was led to, and I'm so glad that I am. And unfortunately, we had to go through that crisis as a family. But oftentimes, I tell my patients that your crisis is often the thing that's going to lead you to your solution. That the greatest pain you have in your life will lead to your greatest breakthrough. That if you're willing to allow it to lead you to discovering truth, and then you will find on the other side of this opposition is a great opportunity. And that's what we see oftentimes with people that come into our clinic, is that they're coming in down because of their problem, but they leave elevated because of the solution, and knowing that there's hope for them and it resides inside of you. And that's what I feel like we will talk a good bit about today, is the fact that my brother wasn't healed by any drugs or surgeries. Those didn't work. He was healed by his own body healing itself.
Let's talk about that for a minute. You were talking about chiropractic, and a lot of people assume that it's only for people who have back pain or things like that, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what all chiropractic does, and chiropractors for that matter. Can you explain to us what basically you do with people?
Yeah, I mean, chiropractic, the reason why people think it's back pain is because the medical system has given us that piece of the pie, right? They have given us 2 or 3 procedural codes and treatment codes on the diagnostic spectrum that we're technically able to bill for, technically via the insurance paradigm, which we have seen collapse. But that's really the medical model's plan for chiropractic. But the chiropractic model is very different. And if you go back in the history of chiropractic, which truly began in 1895, but one thing you have to realize is that people have been having their spines aligned for 4,000 years. 4,000 years. And yes, often it was for aches and pains in the back, but often it was also for internal issues like diabetes and digestive issues and kidney infections, and the list goes on. And there's history of this documented in ancient hieroglyphics dating all the way back to Egypt and ancient Egypt. But what we see now is that chiropractic became an official profession when we started to really study the science of the nervous system and study the science of the spine. And then we developed the art of the adjustment. And then we were able to reproduce it. And then we developed it to turn into an actual profession. And the chiropractic early on wasn't famous for back pain. It was actually really famous for immunity. Back in the late 1800s and the first 20 years of the 1900s, the chiropractors were really known for helping people overcome tuberculosis and the flu and major infections that often would kill people back then, but they were actually able to recover because of chiropractic care. Now, of course, for musculoskeletal things like a shoulder or a back or a knee or a hip that hurts, chiropractic is brilliant, and even the medical community has accepted that. But when it comes to the organic, systemic, visceral issues, chiropractic is actually even more powerful, and it's actually more profound, because the nervous system is housed by the spine. And so when the spine is out of alignment, it interferes with that, and it inhibits the messages and the transmission of signals from your brain, which is running everything, as we all know. The brain controls our bodies, and it enables the bodies to function. Well, when the spine is shifted out of the right position, it interferes with those neurological pathways, and the actual neurons, they don't fire at the same rate or rhythm or frequency, or they completely get blocked, and that's what leads to what we call dis-ease, or without ease, or dysfunction, or without function. The word, if you study language, the word dis-ease, the root of the word is ease. The prefix is dis. It's added. What does it mean? The word dis means without. Well, if you're using the word without, that also is telling you that there is such thing as with. So what does with ease mean? What does with function mean? So you have to then ask the question, what is function? How does function happen? And you're going to go back to the nervous system. Every medical doctor, every nurse, every physical therapist that I've ever worked with, myself, they all agree that the nervous system and the central nervous system is the master control system for the body. So if your central nervous system is interfered with, it leads to problems with your cardiovascular system, or your integumentary system, or your digestive, or your reproductive, or your immune, or you name the system. It's going to be influenced in a negative way if you're interfering. And the spine is at the root of that.
Absolutely. And explain to us, can you explain to us kind of like how that works as far as, I don't know if you have your spinal cord there in the room with you, but...
well, I don't have one, Derek. I apologize.
That's okay.
I don't know if you can see my hands, but I'll keep using my two hands.
Okay.
Yeah,
but the idea is like it's like a kink in a water hose. It would be kind of like the idea, right?
You know what, Gary? I think that's a great example, except for this, Gary. The water goes both ways.
Yeah.
You see, in the water hose analogy, all you have is water coming from the faucet of the house going out to the water the flowers. But in your body, you also have water coming from the flower bed back to the house. Because the nervous system is a two-way street. You have the afferent message, which comes from your brain to your heart, to your thyroid, to your taste buds, to your biceps. But then you have the efferent part, which comes from the biceps and the thyroid and your salivary glands and goes back to the brain. And both of them are going simultaneously, and they work symbiotically together. So it's a more complex system than simply A goes to B. It's A goes to B and B goes back to A. And so because of that, the dynamic is great for potential interference, and the interpretation gets to be more complicated because you need to know, is this affecting more the pathway from brain to body, or is it affecting the pathway body to brain, and is that why we're having the issue? So, you know, the spine has a certain structure. If you went and studied anatomy or a physiology, but let's say anatomy and spinal anatomy, every anatomy textbook, you'll see the images of the spine. They are straight from front to back and curved from the side. Gary, I don't know about you. Ken, I don't know about you, but I know when I was in school, I remember specifically the nurse was Mrs. O'Mullen. She was our nurse, and I think I was in 4th or 5th grade. And I remember having to go to the nurse's station as part of our, I don't know, checkup or something, and she had me take my shirt off, and I bent forward to touch my toes. And she wanted to see if I had a scoliosis in my back. Well, what did I find out that day? She told me that I had a little curve in my back. But you know what? I never thought anything of it. I was in 4th or 5th grade. So I moved on with my life, you know. I was going back to the baseball field to go back to play. You know, I just had no idea what that meant. And she didn't either, I found out, because had she known what I know now, she would have told my parents, hey, your son Pete, he's got a little curvature in his back, you should get him checked out, because that will have a major influence over his organs and his function later on in his life. Well, my parents never got the memo, and that never happened. Well, at 22 years old, I'm graduating undergrad. I'm deciding to make a career change from being an OT, an occupational therapist, and I wanted to go and become a chiropractor, so I decided to go get a job working for a chiropractor. Right? I thought that was a good idea. I want to find out what I'm going to be doing every day before I go ahead and invest in this. Well, part of my job, I worked the front desk as a receptionist, and the chiropractor I worked for told me that if I was going to work there, then I would be able to get adjusted. And so I thought, well, that's cool. He said, well, we're going to take an x-ray. I said, well, I'm fine. I feel fine. I don't need an x-ray. He said, well, no, everybody, you know, I want to see your spine because it's going to show us a lot that you can't feel. So he took an x-ray of my spine. I had a scoliosis in my back. That little curve in my back that as a 4th grader, 5th grader, turned into a scoliosis by 22 years old. And I had played a lot of sports. I was a musician, and I worked a lot of hard jobs doing construction all through undergrad. And I had no idea because I had no pain. I felt fine. I had no numbness in my legs. I had no organ issues, nothing. But I had a scoliosis in my low back. And that taught me a lot because I realized it wasn't about pain, that you won't necessarily feel it. And what's interesting here, Gary, is I then went through a process of getting it corrected through getting adjustments. And it took a long time to correct it because it had been there since I was probably a child. And it was over a decade and a half of it being set and the muscles starting to really form in that way. And so I had to retrain my body. And that's one of the things that I specialize in now in my clinic is helping people correct that, which is probably a more complex situation and conversation than we can do right now. But I will say this, though, Gary. Think about the top diseases. Let me ask you a question, if it's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
What are the top diseases that are, you talked about the political. I heard in the Republican primary, it was brought up. We have 2 doctors running, and one of the gentlemen from Arkansas brought up about the healthcare problems. He talked about the 4 top killers. Well, what are the top 2 killers? Do you know what the top 2 ones are in this country right now?
Well, I believe number 1 is heart disease, and number 2 is cancer.
Correct. And what we know about these diseases, Gary, is that what they write about these diseases is that they're silent killers. And silent killers is essentially this. You don't feel them. And you have them. So I have a problem that's the most deadly, and I don't feel it. And this is one of the things that makes them the most deadly, is they go underneath symptoms, the radar of symptomatology. Well, our entire medical paradigm is built on marketing pain and symptomatic relief. So what they market to you now is early detection when it comes to cancer and heart disease. They market prevention. But what we know is that we've been failing on that front because we're seeing the rates of cancer are supposed to rise, they're saying, by 75% by 2030. 75% rise? No, thank you. That sounds to me like a failed medical system. Well, it's only 2015. That's 15 years from now. I believe that we can make a major change if we start teaching people that it's not about feeling, but it's about function. It's not about reacting, but it's about being proactive. And it's not about symptoms, but it's about cause. And if we can have that conversation, I believe that's the right conversation now. I think we can change our healthcare system. We can take a $3 trillion failing model and cut that down to less than $1 trillion and have a healthy nation. 340 million people that are equipped because they're educated and they're empowered versus simply being a victim because this is just the way that it is. I don't believe that's the way it should be. It doesn't have to be. And I believe that if the people, we can rise up and take responsibility for our health, we can see a major change.
Absolutely. I think you're right on target, that a lot of times we don't feel what's going on, just like you couldn't feel your scoliosis. Unfortunately, I waited to see you till I did feel some pain, which, I wish I'd gone to see you earlier. People don't feel things like heart disease forming. They don't feel cancer forming, at least not until it's too late. And I think that's very important. Now, you hit up something, too, about just people just being the victim and just saying, well, that's just how it is. Because I think that's true. I think a lot of times people just assume on certain things, well, that's how it is. I'll give you an example. Let's talk about genetics for a second and the role it plays. Because a lot of times people assume, well, my dad and my granddad, they both had heart disease. It's a genetic thing, and there's just nothing I can do about it. Is that true?
Gary, genetics plays a role in disease. We do know that. Fathers and mothers and grandmothers, we can study family histories, and genetics does play a role. But what research is now showing, whether it's cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, diabetes, osteoporosis, whatever the condition may be that they're linking to genetics, they're seeing that the genetic role is smaller than the lifestyle role in every one of those diseases. With cancer, they're saying most cancers are there's only, I think, like 3% of cancers are what they call monogenetic, meaning it's genetic cause and that's it. There's nothing else you can do about it. It's a genetic issue. 3%. 97% of cancers have a cause outside of genetics that's influencing them. Well, they say 80% of all cancers, the epigenetics is far greater than the genetic. And heart disease, the American Heart Association, on its own website, it says 80% of heart disease is preventable. In other words, genetics plays a minimal role, 20% at best with cancer and heart disease, and the same with Alzheimer's disease, which, by the way, Alzheimer's disease is type 3 diabetes. That's what we're calling it now in my world, the world of natural health care. because we're understanding the reason why we're getting the degeneration in the brain and the astrocytes in the brain. We're getting all of this going on. It's actually the result of an inflammatory lifestyle, and it's a result of toxic thinking and stress and a buildup over time of plaque in the brain, just like it would build up in the arteries. And so we're seeing that if you can truly get to the root of understanding the cause, then you can change it. Well, the cause is your lifestyle. It's the study of epigenetics, and epigenetics is the study above genetics. What controls genetics? Well, if you've seen any of the documentaries like Food Incorporated or some of the other documentaries, Fat, Sick, Nearly Dead, and I'm not here to promote those. I'm just talking about them because people usually come to me like, hey, I saw this video. What do you think about it? Because it's on Netflix or something. I understand. But here's the thing you're going to read or listen to in those videos is the doctors and the research that they're presenting talks about how you can turn on and turn off genes that are disease genes. You can turn on and turn off. So I tell my patients, listen, I give you a loaded gun. It doesn't mean that you're going to murder somebody or yourself. You don't have to ever pull the trigger on the gun just because you have a loaded gun. Just because you have a condition in your family history that says you're prone to this or that doesn't mean you're going to get it. It just means you might have a gun that's loaded with a few more bullets than I have, and you just have to control that situation maybe a little more than I do even by being more vigilant and cognizant and just being on top of your lifestyle choices. And with that, we're seeing people that were at risk, their risk goes away by choosing to live a healthy lifestyle.
And you were talking about Alzheimer's too. A good video I saw on that was by Barnard.
Yes.
And I believe that video is free, full length on YouTube, where he talks about, and diet is one of the main things he refers to in that, and he talks about the studies where they found that the people who had and they know they have the name for the genetic predisposition for Alzheimer's, but the people who were eating this certain way and living this certain lifestyle weren't getting it. And they found that people also who didn't have the genetic predisposition but were eating or having an unhealthy lifestyle were having short-term memory problems and issues, even though they weren't predisposed to it. So that's a fascinating talk. I think that people can watch on YouTube. That's out there for free. Let's talk about too on the nutrition side of things. I know too. There's a lot of people who think if I go and eat more blueberries, or if I go and make me some white pine tea because it's loaded with vitamin C, I'm getting all these vitamins, and these vitamins are going to heal my body. But you were talking about earlier, it's actually the body that the vitamin it's the body, or is it the body creating the environment, or is it creating the environment for the body to heal?
It's a great conversation. It's kind of like what came first conversation. Can you hear me okay, Gary?
Yes.
Okay. And it's one of those, our bodies heal themselves. That's it. Like, that's the end of the sentence, right? It's the end of the chapter. The next chapter is what supports the body healing itself, right? Because the body heals itself. There's people that eat junk food all the time, and they don't get sick. And then you have people that eat healthy food all the time, and they're sick. So you may say, well, it's not about eating, healthy or unhealthy necessarily. What is it about? Well, the body heals itself is true, but what you eat is so important. And that's why I always go back to the spine, Gary, and I'm going to go back to that end of the nutrition right now, because there's a guy named Jim Fixx. Jim Fixx is known in the United States as the inventor of running. He was a marathon runner, and he was a vegetarian, and he was a picture of health. He started really running as a trend in this country. And Jim Fixx, at the early age, I believe it was 42 years old, died of a massive heart attack at 42 years old, yet he was a picture of health. He was in great shape. he ate vegetarian, which some might say would be a healthy diet, right? I'm not here telling you which diet you should or shouldn't eat. I'm just saying he was doing everything right. His friends would say he was the healthiest person that we know, and he died of a heart attack. So there was a root there that wasn't being addressed. And what I always tell people is there's other factors besides exercising and eating well. And one of the pieces of the puzzle that had to be missed for him was his nervous system. Neurologically, he had stress probably on the nerves going to his heart, and his heart wasn't able to recover to the stress of exercising, which was a good thing, but a good thing, a little bit too much, can be a bad thing too. So you have to find out what the balance is. Well, nutrition is important because when my brother Jonathan was so sick, when we went to Mexico, we found out that he was toxic from eating the wrong things and also from taking many medications, by the way, over the years, which are toxins. But also he was deficient in many of the basic minerals and enzymes. And so he had to replenish those. And we had to heal his gut, and we had to heal his body. So, Gary, I think it's a complicated conversation, but yet it's simple. It's the body heals itself is the fact, and then you have to support the body's ability to heal itself by giving it the nutrients that it needs to be able to do its job. If you don't give it the nutrients that it needs, you're putting it in a place of compromise. When it compromises that, your body will adapt, and as an adaptive process, a lot of times the diseases and the dysfunctions and the disorders, they start to manifest themselves. And so I usually tell people, you can't just treat it from a nutritional standpoint. You have to look at it holistically. You have to look at it neurologically. You have to look at it psychologically and mentally and emotionally and spiritually. And you have to look at it chemically. When you look at those three, that's when you have the best. That's why I say there's three causes of disease. Well, stress is the cause, but you have stress in three dimensions. The physical dimension, you have it in the emotional and the spiritual dimension, and you have it in the chemical dimension. And when you look at those three together, then you can actually come up with a great plan for somebody for healing.
Yeah, and I think that also explains why, and I've heard you say this too, where you have that 98-year-old grandpa who smoked his whole life.
Yeah.
And you know, he lives to be 100 years old, and then you got this young guy who dies at 42. He's running, he's trying to do everything right, but like you said, you know, there's something else that's missing, going back to the nervous system. Now, you mentioned just a minute ago the what are those three things that cause or create?
This is big, Gary. Literally, I think we would change the entire healthcare system in the United States if we could grasp this right here. Because I actually truly believe that stress is the cause. And if you go to the World Health Organization, they say the cause of disease worldwide, the number one cause of disease is stress. And stress comes in three very distinctive forms. We call them traumas, thoughts, and toxins, 3 T's. Traumas, thoughts, and toxins. Those three are the causes of all, I would say, 98 or 97% of disease, because they're all stresses on the body. And they come in 3 forms. Traumas, and that would be more the physical form of stress. So we can get in a car accident, get rear-ended, you know, pulling out of the grocery store. We can have a fall and slip on the ice last, winter when we had all those ice storms. You can have a baby, that had a really tough, entrance into the world, who's, getting stress on their body. You can deal with a child who spends 6 or 8 hours a day sitting in front of a desk doing schoolwork, and now these days goes home and sits in front of their video games, right? Not having enough movement is a major stress in our life. That's under the physical dimension. Not moving enough. Dr. Joan Verkanos, who is the director of the Life Science Center for NASA, she finds, and she's written several great papers on what we call now the sitting disease. She says the 4th leading cause of death in this country is sitting, sedentary lives. And she says, we live, because she actually studied that science of what happens to your body when you sit. Not only does it cause degeneration of the bones in your back, but it also causes degeneration of the joints in the hips and in the body, but also breakdown of the actual systems in the body causing disease. And so that's a big thing. So physical is one major dimension, the lack of movement, the stresses from traumas. What about moving but moving improperly, like the guys who do CrossFit now? I work with a lot of CrossFit athletes who are trying to be Rich Froning, and they can't, but they try, and they do all these Olympic lifts with bad techniques and posture. Well, you're doing more harm than good. You think that doing that workout faster was good, but you're making your body more and more unstable and more unhealthy, and you won't be able to work out for much longer. You know, I have a lot of retired NFL football players as patients, and a lot of their bodies are just broken because they devoted X number of years to their life to, you know, physical exercise and demand, but now they can barely move and walk. You know, many of them are just aches and pains, and they're taking medications all the time just to live, you know, because they're in such pain. So that's physical. So that's one dimension. So it's traumas. The second dimension is the thoughts. And this is probably the most profound of all of them, because the study right now, the field of study that I'm spending a lot of time in, is what we call psychoneuroimmunology, which is a study of the mind and the nervous system and the immune system connection. And what they're finding is that, you know, you cannot disconnect your thoughts from your immune system or your thoughts from your nervous system, because they function together. They're literally one. You can never separate them. And so the thoughts that we think affect our health. Well, that means that if you're bitter or you're angry or you're anxious or you're upset about something, that's lowering your immune system. That's weakening your immune system, even if you just think about it for 5 minutes. But then what happens when we think about stuff and we get stressed, then we get all emotional. So then we say, well, I want to eat something that makes me feel better. So we go to Starbucks and we get, you know, a big frap, and maybe we pick up a sandwich on the way. We're eating a high sugar, high carbs diet because we're stressed, because we're anxious. So we're adding more toxins into our body chemically, more stress to our body. Our immune system already dropped because you had a bad thought, because when you check that email, you got some negative cycle thinking going. Then you tried to subsidize that by eating junk food because that makes you feel better temporarily, emotionally, but actually your immune system dropped farther. And then what happens is we get in this vicious cycle and pattern of this, and then sooner or later we have cancer. Sooner or later we have Alzheimer's. Sooner or later we've got a bum knee or a bad back or headaches. Why? Because this process. So our thought life is so profound, and now we could spend hours just talking about that. And then the third is chemical, toxins. And that's going to be our diet. And we could spend many hours talking about the toxics side as well. But that's going to be, what are the foods that you're eating? What are the chemicals that you're ingesting on your skin? What are the things that you're using around your house to clean? You know, what type of chemicals are being put in our tap water? What type of chemicals are being sprayed on the foods that are that the farmers are growing in the farms now? What chemicals are preserving the foods that we're eating and our kids are eating? What type of oils are we cooking the school lunches for the kids in? What's in those vending machines at those schools and all around our city, right? So the chemical toxins. And then on top of that, this is what I always tell people, Gary. I say, so you've been eating crap. Is that okay if I say that word?
Yes.
Okay. You've been
or
eating.
You can say fecal matter.
Okay. You've been eating junk, right? Let's just say. Let's just call a spade a spade. And we all like junk. I'm not going to say I don't like it myself, but we eat it. Then that junk makes our body junk, basically. It makes our body less powerful, less strength, less, articulate in our thinking, less, rested, all of it. So we get broken down. So we eat chemicals that make us sick, and then we go to the doctor who gives us chemicals to make us better, but those chemicals have 18 other side effects that come with it, so it actually makes you worse. So I have a chemical problem that I mask with another chemical that's making another problem. Do you see that? That's asinine. It's foolishness. It's a vicious cycle. You know what it is? It's a failed system. You know what that is? That's our healthcare system. The medical model, the pharmaceutical industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. They have the market share. They have the trust of the people. They have the faith of the people. They have the ears of the politicians. They own the media, except for this program. And and what do? Well, they influence because they're brilliant marketers. Just look at Pfizer or GlaxoSmithKline or Merck. Look at the marketing budget for Merck or Pfizer or GlaxoSmithKline versus their research and development budget. It's twice the amount. They're spending $14 billion on marketing and $7 billion on research and development on new cancer therapies, right? So what are they really interested in? Well, they're interested in more clients. They're not interested in actually getting you well. And there's a lot more to say about that. But those are the three, dimensions that cause stress or lead to disease in the body. So if we can address those three, we really could change health, not only for an individual, which I see, or a family, which I see, but I believe a whole city and a whole state and a whole nation.
Mm-hmm. Especially here in our country, which, if I understand correctly, is the worst or least healthiest industrialized nation. And especially here in the South, which is, of our country, the place that is the least healthiest.
Well, Tennessee is, I think we were ranked least heart-friendly city for women. We had that distinct award a few times. We're in the bottom 5, I think, right now for heart health. For fitness, actually Knoxville takes the gold for that, the least fit city and the most unhealthy city in the United States. Memphis was number 2 for least fit, and Nashville was number 3. And, I drive around and, I lived for 4 years in the Twin Cities, Minnesota, where I studied and got my doctorate. And I lived in the coldest major city in North America. And it's 2 cities, St. Paul and Minneapolis. Well, St. Paul and Minneapolis is known for being one of the top 3 fittest cities in the country. Well, I'll tell you, it's cold over 6 months of the year there, and freezing cold for a good solid 4 months, like below 0 in the morning every day, where you have to plug your car in so that it starts type of deal, right? and these people are fit, and it's because I believe there's a culture of health, because these people live with a lot of challenge, snow and ice and cold. You have to have thick skin, so to speak, literally. But you have to have a little bit of fight in you to just get out and get going and take your kids to school and go to work every day.
I'm going to say part of that is also they're shivering all the time.
That's true, and that's a great exercise, right? Lowering their body fat that way. I appreciate that, Ken. I think you're spot on. Yeah, because even if I put 2 pairs of a jacket and like long johns, long underwear, and a pair of jeans, I was still cold. It was anyway. But yeah, in the South, I think it's a cultural thing, Gary, is what I'm trying to say. It's that up there, up north, where I happen to live for 4 years, there's still sick people, there's still people overweight and out of shape, but it's far, far less than here. Minnesota is not a healthy. The United States overall is not a healthy country. And Minnesota is not a healthy state. It's just healthier than we are here. But yeah, we really struggle with our health in Tennessee. And whether it's Rutherford County, Davidson County, Williamson County, whatever, Murray County, whatever county you want to talk about, Bedford County, they're all struggling with their health. And I always tell people, listen, as a city and as a country, we're very far from health. If we want to get closer to health, then we have to really start changing our thinking, and we got to changing our behaviors.
Absolutely. I'll just share with you something that's changed in my thinking, which is I'm mostly plant-based now in my eating, and that's through inspiration of reading books and watching videos of guys like Dr. John McDougall, Neil Barnard, Caldwell Esselstyn, T. Colin Campbell, all these great guys who have a lot of good stuff on Netflix, YouTube, and just trying to inform people about health. And what I think is funny, because I hear people when I tell them, friends and whatnot, it's like, oh, I don't want to do that. I want to eat my meat, and which is fine. And I don't totally not eat meat. I mean, I still hunt and fish, so I like to eat my organic stuff. But what's funny to me about that is that the mindset of, if you look at some of the baddest dudes in history, they were plant-based eaters. Whether it's Roman soldiers, gladiators, it's basically plant-based is the warrior diet. And every major culture was built on it, and every major fighting force that was the winner was based on it. And so I think some of this is I'm masculine because I eat meat. No, it's actually the opposite is true.
Yeah.
You're masculine when you switch to a plant base.
Yeah. Yeah, I would completely agree with that. And I'll just give you examples from my own life. When I have a big day, a long day in my clinic, and you've been in my office.
Yes.
So, it's a very manual job, but it's also extremely mental. So I have to have all of my faculties firing. I can't just sit and use my brain. I have to stand and use my legs, my arms, and my brain, and all at the same time, all the time. And my regimen is very, very sharp, very tight. But if I don't eat certain things, or eat certain things that I shouldn't or don't normally eat, it affects that. And I agree that it is true. And you can really be countercultural. But again, like you said, you're studying these 5 or 6 people that you mentioned there that are, have done their research. They've studied these cultures, ancient cultures, and cultures around the world right now that are free of a lot of the diseases that we currently are plagued by, because they live a different way of life. And we could easily do that if we just have to decide, just like you made a decision. So let me ask you, how did you make that decision to do that, and how has that been going for you?
Well, basically, one of my best friends, is a guy who's used to struggle with Crohn's disease, and he studied a lot of these different guys and basically got me in on it. And I watched some of these documentaries, and then I realized, I mean, just like what you were saying, some of these guys worked in cultures where they were like, the people who are rich, who eat like we do in America, are the ones that are my patients. And the poor people who eat much simpler foods that are more plant-based, they don't have all these same health problems. In fact, in like Okinawa, where people are living, it's not unnormal to live over 100 years old there. So that inspired me. And my goal personally is to be 80 or so % plant-based, because I know, sometimes you go to birthday parties and things like that, but anyway, so I cheat every now and then. But overall, my health, when I'm eating the way that I like these doctors and like you guys propose, I mean, I'll drop body fat really rapidly. I mean, I can just tell like my health improves overall, and how I feel in my digestion. That's a big, because that's one of the things that and I've been coming to you for is things with that, and I know eating right helps with that. When I eat wrong, it hurts me. So.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm about where you're at. I do 80%. There's some weeks that I'll go 100%, and there's some where I'll go a little bit less. But I would say pretty much across the board for the last 7 years of my life, it's probably been close to 80%, plant-based. Now I eat animal proteins, but again, I'm choosing very carefully what those are and when I'm doing them. So that's, like last night, I had no animal proteins because I know I was going to do this interview today. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't know animal proteins, yesterday, and probably today. I probably will do, because I know my day tomorrow, and I have a little bit more of a relaxed day tomorrow as far as mentally and physically goes. So I can do some animal proteins, because you'll notice that you don't sleep as well, right? You'll notice that you're not quite as rested when you wake up in the morning. You're a little heavier. Your legs are a little heavier. But when you're doing a plant-based diet, it's kind of like you can float a little bit. You're kind of like, it's this light about you, and that becomes really addictive. The idea of feeling great all the time, and that's why I'm sure those ancient warriors, why they did that, because they realized we're fleet of foot. We're very are mentally very sharp, and obviously if you have those two things, it's hard to win. Beat those people. So.
Absolutely. I mean, when I'm eating right, I mean, I can think clear. My energy's up. I don't feel sick or groggy feelings. I mean, it's just a night and day different. We started a little bit late. I want to tell on you a little bit. So we started a hair late today on the show, and I called up there and I was like, "Where's Dr. Pete?" And they said he was doing an adjustment. And then before we started the show, you told me that you were working with somebody and they were telling you about some things that you wanted to share with us. So if you don't mind, could you share with us what they were telling you?
Well, I think it's beautiful how this is happening, because it ties it all together, because it's where I met you, Gary. I went to a class where it was like a pre-birthing class where I was asked to come and speak about just how to make a healthy labor and delivery and all that, and I talked about the nervous system that day, and I talked about the spine, and how important it is to get adjusted when you're pregnant and also when you're born. Well, we had a baby born we've had 3 babies born into our practice in the last 2 weeks, and I had a baby that was born on Tuesday that just came into my office specifically to see me, and so I knew I had to be here on this program, but I knew that they had you and I both know to get out of the house with babies.
Uh-huh.
They had an appointment. They were probably a little bit late for their appointment. I honored the fact that they were here, and I adjusted their daughter, who was born 3 days ago. And actually, when I checked her little spine, her neck was out of alignment and the left side of her atlas, and so I adjusted it gently. And but that's what was my reason for not being able to be here right at 10, because I was actually adjusting my newest patient, who was born on Tuesday. And I think it's important to discuss that because, when you look at the formation of the human body, when we talk about the body healing itself, we talk about these toxins and causes, what I always tell people is it always comes down to identity. When I buy things for my kids and I have to put it together, I have a higher level of ownership of it. Gary, you have children and I have children. I love your children because they come in and I think they're amazing people and you guys are amazing. My children, there's a different relationship that I have with them because they're actually the children that my wife and I, we've birthed them. And there's something about them, their identity that's tied directly into me. And your children's identity is tied directly into you. And I think that we have to understand psychologically and emotionally that we are creatures that our identity determines our beliefs and many of our behaviors. And so if we understand how our body works, how we were made, it really does change the outcome. And when you study the body and the formation of a human life, at conception, the first thing that develops is the brain, spinal cord, and nerves. And that's why when I'm adjusting these babies, why the parents bring their children in to see me, not because they have problems necessarily, even though some of them do and they do very well with adjustments, babies do, but they come in to prevent things from ever happening. And they come in to make sure that those babies' spines are lined straight up, and I know you can testify to that with your own children. I know I can testify to that with my own children. But it's not for pain, it's for function. It's objective reasons why we adjust, not subjective. And I think just to leave you with that, that's my greatest passion, because my parents knew. They said if Jonathan would have had his spine checked when he was 6 years old, we might have prevented the decade of medicine and surgeries and pain and nearly dying had they got to the cause earlier. Thank God that there's redemption. He had his life changed and saved, and he's doing well now 20 years later. But we had to go through a lot of pain to find the truth.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you this little story. When you first met us at that Bradley class,
that's right.
And you adjusted my son, he was only at that time probably a few months at the most old. And before that point, he was a child, and we think he had some reflux really bad, and he would just cry a lot, like just these terrible cries. Unlike my daughter, she was the chillest baby ever. But my son was the complete opposite when he was first born, and just crying a lot at night. And I remember, praying to God. It's like, I don't know how much longer I can deal with this, because this is it's like I'm never going to sleep again, I feel like. Well, even just that one little adjustment that you did, immediately we could see a difference in how much he was crying, and I mean, it completely changed his demeanor in so many ways, just that one little adjustment at that one time. So you wouldn't think that something as simple like that, or we might think is simple, can make a difference in a little baby like that, but it does, because like you were saying, I think too, he had a lot of trauma being birthed. In fact, he couldn't come out. His head was crooked, he was the wrong way, he was wrapped around in the cord. I mean, it was a traumatic birth for him. But so I really appreciate you, with that. It's getting time to wrap up. Can you tell us, okay, let's say somebody's watching the show today, and of course, if you are watching, his practice is called Revolution Chiropractic. It's in Murfreesboro. How can somebody contact you to get an initial appointment or get into one of your events?
Yeah, great. Two things. We do a lot of events, so I think it's people can come to events. Like we had an event last Friday, our Women's Wellness Workshop. We talked about cancer prevention, and heart disease and how to prevent diseases for women. But we do events, a lot of events. So you can go to a website. My website, I have a few different ones, but one is Dr. Peter Live. So it's just DrPeterLive.com, Dr. Peter Live. And you can actually listen to old workshops that I have done on specific topics like thyroid and autoimmunity, or hormone-based weight loss, or cancer prevention, or children and family health issues. So Dr. Peter Live is where you can actually get access more just material to listen to, audios. And then you can also click on that and you can send me an email if you have a specific health question. I'd love to be able to answer your question. You can also go on to Facebook. My name is Dr. Peter Camiolo. You can send me a message on Facebook as well. But then if you wanted to actually, like, let's say, come to the clinic to meet with me and, let's say, do an evaluation of your spine to see if chiropractic might be able to help you with whatever your struggle or health issue is, or you simply want to do it as a preventative action and measure, you can call directly the local number, 615-867-7693, 615-867-7693. Or you can actually go to our clinic website and you can actually just make an appointment there. And the clinic site is drcamiolo.com, drcamiolo.com. I know that's not an easy name to spell, but it's drcam as in Mary, iolo.com. So that's our website, drcamiolo.com. You can just type in Revolution Chiropractic Murfreesboro into Google, and you'll find those there. But yeah, you can, and then we do events every month. So for example, this month, Gary, in October, we're doing a recipe night, but we're focusing on making healthy desserts. A lot of people think, well, I'm not going to go to that doctor because he's just going to tell me I can't eat my food anymore. How about you come and I'm going to make you chocolate cake and cookies and brownies and cupcakes and donuts. How about that, right? Because that's what we're going to do. It's all going to be healthy. It's going to help you lose weight and prevent heart disease. We're going to teach you how to eat healthy. So come to our recipe night coming up. I believe it's the 19th of October. And or you can come shopping with me. I'm doing what we call Shop with the Doc, where I take you grocery shopping and I teach you how to navigate through your grocery store without breaking the bank, shopping healthy on a budget. I'm going to teach you how to read labels and navigate through. That's coming up on October the 21st, which is a Wednesday. We've got 2 times that I'm doing it, at 12 noon and also 6:30 p.m. at the Kroger here on Old Fort Parkway. And then we're also doing a diabetes workshop called Defeating Diabetes on November the 2nd, which is a Monday evening at 6:30 here in my clinic at Revolution Chiropractic. And then we have many other events. But those are 3 that kind of come to mind right now that might be, as somebody listening, you might want to take advantage of. And those are all free events for you. And if you mention that you listen to this program and you want to make an appointment as well, I will comp your first visit. It's on me. So I'll pay for the whole appointment as a gift. So you could take advantage of that as well.
Well, that's awesome. You don't get that from normal doctors, do you? Yeah, well, we're not the normal ones.
Something
else that I wanted to say that Dr. Pete offers too is that they also have a gym.
Yes, we do.
So that's they really do try to take care of the whole package with health and getting you healthy, and that's one of the reasons that I enjoy and really love going there because I know that it's not just they see me for 5 minutes, write me something, sell me drugs basically, and send me out. But these are a group of people who really are interested in making me healthy. So, Dr. Pete, I want to thank you for being on here today. And if you don't have anything else to add, we can wrap it up.
Okay, that was a great show, and sure appreciate you, Dr. Pete, for showing up and informing everyone of maybe how they're looking at their health. They could take a different, stance on that. And instead of treating symptoms, look at how to get and stay well. Certainly appreciate that, and all of the links and stuff like that. We're going to try and roll that into the video and maybe below the video here, so you can contact Dr. Pete whenever you get ready. So that's all I have. If you guys are done, I'll go ahead and stop the broadcast.
That's it. Thanks so much for having me on, Ken and Gary. It was a pleasure.